Talia's Troubles, Part 56. Proud of Yourselves. The End of Winter, 2402-3. A letter to my most noble Lord Luca Vespucci of Varezzo, from your loyal servant Antonio Magello, sent from the city of Pavona, recently delivered of the threat of destruction at the hands of Razga-Boldagut's brutes. I pray this missive finds you blessed by all the gods, and that the realm of Varezzo lies both happy and secure, untouched by the misfortune suffered by so many other Tilean principalities. It seems the brute horde has at last departed the realm of Pavona, having circumnavigated the city in a most murderous and destructive fashion, razing Montorio and Todi to the ground. They took all they could carry, which was almost everything, having brought massive wagons with them, as if it was always their main purpose to steal as much as possible. This being so, and now that such communication is possible, I took the first available opportunity to dispatch unto you this missive. Duke Guidobaldo has proclaimed to his subjects a species of victory, for although no battle was fought by his army, yet nevertheless, somehow, he has seen off Boldaguts and Mangler. I cannot claim to know the truth, but even Razga-Boldaguts must have balked at the thought of attacking a mightily walled city such as Pavona, garrisoned by a still substantial and veteran army. The Duke is not short of artillery. Verily the walls bristle with muzzles. And more than these, there are novel engines of war, the like of which I have never before seen, including a monstrosity bearing rank upon rank of fireworks, a kind of explosive rochetto. Having witnessed a demonstration, it seems to me that successful employment in battle would leave great swathes of the field reeking of burnt ogre flesh. The mood in the city is not one of celebration, however, for all joy has been tempered by the first pangs of real hunger, and all relief is soured by the knowledge that the fields of both Todi and Casoli are laid waste, the livestock stolen, and the city's storehouses almost empty. The town of Skazese avoided destruction at the ogre's hands, for the Duke ordered the demolition of the bridge at Casoli, and the winter waters were too deep and fast-flowing even for Razga's lumbering brutes to cross. Yet word has come only today that Skazese was nevertheless threatened by a greenskin force, perhaps the ogre's nobler servants, and had to pay a ransom in gold and all too precious victuals to avoid a similar fate to those Pavonan settlements north of the river. It is commonly said that the double army of brutes has moved away westwards, along the Via Aurelia, the very same road that brought them here. No one knows if they plan to wreak further devastation in the vicinity of Rimas, or if they intend to return northwards whence they came. A story. Beni Mobili. Goods and chattels.
"'Tain't right,"
complained Mags, catching his breath in the moment he and Brindle felt their burden lighten a little. The ground was levelling out after a long incline.
"This ain't fit work for the likes of us. This is for runts and burden beasts."
"We ain't got any runts or beasts left," said Brindle. "They're all gobbled up."
"I know that. Still don't make it right."
Glancing to the side, he growled under his breath.
"Looks like Mangler's boys have plenty left to haul their loot."
"That's 'cause they've got nearly all the loot and all the grub," said Brindle.
Then he slammed his gut plate.
"We have to eat, which means we have to pay them. And 'cause we ain't got the shiny stuff, then we gives them all the runts we catch, and they keep all the ones they catch."
"But we've got loot. What do you think we're dragging?"
"We're dragging what little loot Razga's got left after paying Mangler. Mangler's service don't come cheap, and for reasons he's keeping to himself, Razga saw fit to pay, and in full."
"So why don't Razga use this loot to buy us some burden beasts or runts?"
Brindle was shaking his head.
"Ain't thought it through, Mags. If we use this loot to buy 'em, then we won't have any loot left for 'em to pull. So why did we buy 'em?"
Mags panted through gritted teeth while pondering the conundrum, a sound that joined in rhythmically with the creaking of the wagon wheels and the clattering of the chains. He and Brindle had been hauling the heavily laden wagon since daybreak, their only rest having been to swap places when Mags complained about his aching arm. Now they were passing Mangler's equally burdened but much more numerous wagons, which had halted for some reason. Several companies of ogres flanked them, providing walls of muscle and steel to protect the precious convoy to windward. Suddenly, a shout came from in front of the flanking wagons.
Proud of yourselves, boys? Doing Nobly's work?"
It was Gordoc, one of Mangler's bullies. Brindle and Mags both chose not to acknowledge him, not even to look at him. This did not stop Gordoc.
"Fair sweating, ain't you? Spite the cold. I feel almost sorry for you, but considering how much loot we're pulling, I can't help but feel happy instead."
"Just ignore him, Mags," hissed Brindle.
"If you're getting tired, do you want me to whip you?"
shouted Gordoc.
"Works wonders on this here pack of runts."
As he spoke, Gordoc handled his long whip, the cord so thick it could serve as the anchor cable for a not insubstantial ship, while the slaves he was tending made a point of not looking at him. Some wore only the ragged remnant of clothes, but the blue and white livery of Pavona was still evident, as most of them had been captured either at the fall of Astiano or in one of several skirmishes since. Some even retained their helmets, their cruel new masters being uninterested in armour of such a diminutive size. Gordoc prided himself in knowing his runts well. He had worked out, for example, how to distinguish those recently captured from those who had served him longer, simply by looking at the length of their beards. And he had learned, after several very bloody incidents, that if he employed all his strength, then merely one lash of his whip could almost cut a runt in two.
"You think we should let the likes of him threaten us?"
asked Mags.
"I think we should do what Rasca told us to do,"
said Brindle, his voice lowered,
"and not cause trouble with Mangler's boys till the time is right. Like I said, Rasca's willing to pay all they ask just now, but that don't mean he's going to let Mangler keep it all. Seems to me once we're done fighting, there'll be a reckoning."
"Can't come soon enough,"
said Mags.
"I'm ready any time, and if Gordoc lives through it, let's see how he fares when harnessed up himself like a burden beast."
He glanced back at the oxen pulling the wagon behind Gordoc's.
"It'll be a tight fit," he chuckled, "but I'll get it on him, even if it kills him."
"You'll get your chance. Seems to me there'll be more fighting yet, otherwise we'd have turned north by now," observed Brindle. "And it's about time Mangler's boys got stuck in and did something to earn what they've got. Don't get me wrong, I like the fighting, and there's been good feasting of the enemy's flesh after, but Mangler's boys have yet to show us anything worth boasting about. They've got the numbers right now, no doubt, but only because they've kept away from any real scrapping."
"Just like they avoided doing any work, too,"
said Mags.
"They're good for nothing."
"Once they've been properly blooded in battle, we'll teach them another bloody lesson," said Brindle. "It's not all bad, you know. If they're letting us take the lead, then we can set the pace. And look, we'll be heading downhill again soon enough."
"Aye, we can save our strength for when Rasca finally tells us to show Mangler's boys who's boss."
Antonio Mugello's letter continued. "As all in Tilea now know, my lord, the war against the vampires has taken a turn for the worse. His Holiness Callictus II is reported to have perished in the great battle at Urbino, his army utterly broken, and what few survivors there were fleeing southwards in desperate haste. None of this bodes well for Talia, especially in light of the terrible destruction wreaked by Rasca Bouldergut's brute army in the heart of the peninsula. The military might of Remas is a mere shadow of its former self, consisting of little more than the garrison army commanded by Captain General Scaringella, so that the southern realms of Porto Maggiore and Alcente are the only great states still able to muster full armies in the field. Yet here in Pavona it is commonly held that all is far from lost, for it is now known that the young Lord Silvano, Duke Guidobaldo's sole surviving heir, a bold and stubbornly noble youth, who chose to honour his vows to fight the wickedness in the north despite the threat presented to his father's realm by the ogres, survived the defeat at Urbino, and is even now returning home. More than that, the small but veteran Pavonan army Lord Silvano commanded is still largely intact, for the Archlector had sent them away before the fateful battle, so that they might assist in Pavona's struggle against the ogres, being satisfied that he could more than replace their numbers in his army with the mercenary sons of the desert. Thus it is that Duke Guidobaldo has now marched westwards from Pavona, intent upon rendezvousing with his son's army, perhaps even the young lord himself, thereby reconstituting the sort of conquering force the Duke used to win his several victories against Astiano and Trantio. The army left the city to the sound of cheers from the crowd, perhaps made all the louder by the heartening fact that the soldiers would no longer need to be fed from what supplies remain in the storehouses. I cannot presume to know Duke Guidobaldo's exact purpose, but at the least he must intend to drive the ogres away, if not to exact bloody revenge upon them for what they have done. Whatever his purpose, it means that the Pavonan army most likely constitutes the greatest force in the north, and one able, perhaps bolstered by whatever allies join them, to make a stand against the undead in the field of battle. In accordance, my lord, with the wishes you expressed in your last missive to me, I intend to follow the Pavonan army, to learn what I can of the Duke's whereabouts, intentions, and fate. In light of the angry nature of the Duke's previous correspondence with you, I will do my utmost to forewarn you of any signs of aggression towards Verezzo. Be assured, however, what with his own subjects and soldiers facing many months of hunger, and with the threat of both ogres and vampires looming, the Duke must surely have enough to keep him occupied, without looking to fight upon any other fronts. I am almost loath to report this next matter to you, my noble lord, for I have but a traveller's gossip to rely upon, a man who claimed once to have been a brother of the Arrabbiati. He told me, and all others who would listen, that Lord Totto, commander of said brotherhood, still lives, and is even now working to recruit warriors to the brotherhood. This man, whose name it is pointless for me to repeat, for it cannot have been his true name, spoke in a most contradictory manner, as if he had been driven mad by what he had suffered and witnessed. At one and the same time, he encouraged all young men he met to travel north to join the brothers, whilst also swearing that very few would do so, for the north was home only to manifested nightmares. Such stuff I would never have thought worthy of report, except that he spoke of something else, which has been confirmed by reports from other sources. He said that the Estalian Compagnia del Sole, commanded by Capitano Bruno Mazzolini, has crossed the Talian Sea to disembark at Urbino, brought there by contract. Neither the man nor any other could tell me anything but idle speculation concerning the identity of Mazzolini's employer. But if true, then perhaps Talia can draw encouragement from the presence of another army able to join in the fight against either or both vampires and ogres. If common sense is of any worth in this time of war, then the Compagnia can only have been brought here for that purpose, for it would surely be madness to suppose that Mazzolini would agree to serve either a vampire or an ogre tyrant. Unless, that is, it is the wizard lord of Campagrotta who has brought them, perhaps to replace his army in the field, should Boulderguts decide he is sated, and finally choose to quit Tilea. A story. Home again. By the Bay of Urbino. I don't know about you, said Baccio, but I never expected to be back in Tilea so soon. Ottaviano chuckled. We certainly returned a lot quicker than it took us to leave. Good to be back in the saddle, though, said Baccio, and with Mamidia's blessings, let's hope we'll fare somewhat better this time. The smile left Ottaviano's face. Fare better? We were defeated and chased away by nothing more than men. Now we return to a realm swarming with rampaging brutes and foul undead, said Ottaviano. Yet you think it might go better for us this time. I said I hoped so, countered Baccio. Besides, Razga Boulderguts and the Vampire Duchess were already busy enough when we were here before. Oh, yes, they were busy, in the distant north, far away from us. Since then Boulderguts has stomped his way into the very heart of Tilea, and there's nothing I know of to stop the undead following on behind. Baccio sniffed. Good job we're here, then, eh? Ottaviano gave his companion a despairing look. You think we could stop them? Fortebraccio's Compagnia was utterly defeated in nothing more than a petty war between tyrants. The same old for Tilea. Since then, however, the apparently unstoppable army of Pavona has been humbled by a double army of ogres, the Duke's rich realm ransacked and razed, while the holy Morite army of Rimas, despite being bolstered by the famed Sons of the Desert, has been torn to pieces by the unliving armies of the northern vampires. Mazzolini's Compagnia ain't that much stronger than Fortebraccio's was, yet you think we can take on the sort of armies that can bring both Pavona and Rimas to their knees. So the enemy has changed, said Baccio dismissively. Different times, different employer, different enemy. Forewarned is forearmed, and Captain Mazzolini is not Fortebraccio. When we served Fortebraccio, we had but one enemy to contend with, whereas now just about everyone is our enemy. The Bavonian Duke is hardly like to embrace us as friends. The ogres attack and pillage everything they encounter, and the vampires are an enemy to anyone alive." Baccio rolled his eyes. "I'm glad you're mentioning this just now, Ottaviano. It would have made for a miserable sea journey to hear you whining in such a manner. So much better that you waited for us to land right in the thick of it before pointing out the dire folly of our coming."
"I'm just telling it like it is."
"Ever the pessimist? Look, to my mind there's more to it. As far as we know, the Pavonian Duke is not defeated, and Renzelli's crossbows do serve in his army. So his hatred of the Campagna must surely have waned. We are Capitano Mazzolini's men, not General Fortebraccio's. Does it matter that our emblem is the same? We are not the Pavonians' enemy. They don't want more enemies, old or new. Instead, they yearn for new allies. Besides, their army is filled with veterans, not militia, as we learned to our cost. As for the Remans, even though the Archlector is dead, the city-state itself has not fallen, and it still has an army in the field. It's not like we're the only force left. Then there's the fact that our new employers can't be entirely defenceless themselves. The mountain dwarfs have always been renowned as warriors, and Bretonians will fight even when not paid to do so, for nothing but honour alone."
"There's probably some truth to what you say, but you're forgetting that they say Duke Guidobaldo's realm has been burned. If so, then the Pavonian army will be hungry. Eduardo Cuoco wrote, 'Victuals is the soul of an army, money but the sinews. Without the first your army cannot fight, without the second but indifferently, but with both admirably well.'"
"Oh, if it's written in a book it must be true," said Baccio sarcastically.
"Common sense tells you it's true. You yourself have seen it to be so. If the Pavonian army is starving, then it can't fight."
"Point taken. I apologise. What else?"
"What?"
"Ottaviano, you're always so thorough in your dismantling of my arguments. If there is nothing else, then can I assume that you agree with my assessment of Remus and our new employers?"
"No."
"I thought not. Remus remains free, yes. But I strongly doubt the Archlector left the best of his soldiers at home when he personally led an army north to face the vampires. That army is gone, and whatever rump of an army remains probably isn't fit to call itself so. It'll be little more than garrison troops, pressed men and mobs of Morite fanatics. As for the mountain dwarfs and this Bretonian lord, our new employers, if they did have any real forces to speak of, then they wouldn't have hired us on such generous terms, would they? What the mountain dwarfs have, at least what we all hope they have, is plenty of gold, but we'd be foolish to assume anything more. And this noble Baron Garoy, I'd be surprised if he commanded anything more than a handful of over-eager tawny knights and a mob of filthy peasants." The two fell silent, both lost in their thoughts. For a few moments the world around them shared in their silence, until the sound of galloping hooves broke the spell.
"They're coming,"
said Ottaviano. Baccio looked towards the gap in the rocky ridge, then spoke. "Well, at least the folk round here are pleased to see us. They bent over backwards to offer their port for our landing."
"A sign of their desperation," said Ottaviano, "which further proves my point. The Abemans have been begging Remus for aid for many seasons, desperate to bolster their defences, but to no avail. Now Remus has nothing to give. Of course they're happy to see us, even if we don't intend to stay. For while we're here, they are safe."
"You mean safer?" suggested Baccio.
Ottaviano smiled. "Pessimism needles its way into everything. I reckon they'll be glad of the time it will take for the whole company to cross the sea. The longer we tarry here, the longer they feel guarded."
The first riders of a troop of mounted crossbowmen now emerged through the gap, garbed in the same livery as the two chancellors, being the blue and vermilion of the Campagna del Sole. "Do you think, Ottaviano, it's possible the Abemans had a hand in ensuring that there weren't enough ships to bring us all over as one, just so that we would be forced to stay here longer?"
"No, Baccio, I don't think that. It seems to me that the fear of ogres, vampires, and uomini ratto is a perfectly satisfactory reason for ships' captains to feel reluctant about sailing in the more northern waters of the Talian Sea."
Muttered Baccio. "That would do it." The horsemen, preceded by a cornet, bearing the Compania's myrmidon white rod and half-sun insignia, and a lieutenant distinguished by a large yellow panache sprouting from his cap, rode by with barely a glance at the two chancellors. Considering the perilous situation in Tilea, Capitano Mazzolini had no intention of dropping his guard, not even for a moment, which is why these and several other companies of light horse had been dispatched to watch every approach to Abimo, at some distance from the town. Baccio and Ottaviano watched them pass, and then, without further words, made their own way back through the gap in the rocks. Lodging sub deum on the cold, hard earth was not for them this night. Instead, spiced wine, a warm fire and a straw bed awaited them in the biggest inn Abimo had to offer. Both had decided that there was plenty enough hardship to come soon enough, and neither wished to bring it about any earlier than necessary.